Before the Mughal Empire rose over the plains of India, before marble domes gleamed beneath the sun, before emperors ruled from jewelled thrones, the story begins far away, in the cold, wind-swept lands of Central Asia. This was a world of open skies and endless horizons, a land shaped by mountains, rivers, and hardship. Here, survival demanded strength, and ambition was born from struggle. In these lands, power did not come from comfort, it came from endurance. More than a century before the Mughals, one man cast a shadow so vast that it would echo through time. His name was Timur, known in the West as Tamerlane. Timur was a conqueror of terrifying brilliance. His armies marched across Central Asia, Persia, and into India itself. Cities fell, kingdoms trembled. Though his empire did not last long after his death, his legacy endured, a legacy of conquest, of ambition, of destiny. From Timur's bloodline, many generations later, a child would be born, not into certainty, not into power, but into struggle. His name was Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. Babur was born in 1483 in the city of Andijan in present-day Uzbekistan. Through his father, he descended from Timur. Through his mother, he traced his lineage to Genghis Khan. Two of history's greatest conquerors flowing through his veins. Yet Babur's childhood was anything but glorious. At just 12 years old, his father died suddenly. The boy inherited a fragile kingdom surrounded by enemies. Uncles became rivals, cousins became threats. Former allies sought his throne. Babur was forced into war before he had learned peace. He lost his kingdom, he fought to reclaim it. And he lost it again. Hunger followed him, betrayal haunted him, exile became his companion. In his own writings, Babur spoke of sleeping without shelter, of wandering with only a few loyal followers, of moments when hope seemed distant. But Babur possessed something rare, an unbreakable belief that his destiny was not finished. He did not see himself as a defeated king. He saw himself as a ruler, waiting for the right land. That land, he believed, lay to the south. Beyond the towering Hindu Kush mountains lay India, a land of immense wealth, fertile plains, grand cities. At the time, India was ruled by the Delhi Sultanate, once powerful, now weakened by internal conflict. Rulers fought among themselves. Armies were vast but poorly coordinated. India had wealth, but it lacked unity. Babur observed carefully. He learned. He prepared. And he embraced something revolutionary. Gunpowder warfare. Cannons, matchlock guns, disciplined formations. Weapons learned from the Ottomans, unknown on Indian battlefields dominated by elephants and traditional cavalry. Babur did not rely on numbers. He relied on strategy. In the year 1526, Babur crossed into India with a small but determined army. Ahead of him stood the ruler of Delhi, Sultan Ibrahim Lodi, commanding a force many times larger. The two armies would meet on the plains of Panipat, a place that would soon be written into history. The battle that awaited them would not only decide a throne, it would give birth to an empire. The Mughal Empire. Chapter 2. The Battle of Panipat and the Birth of an Empire. The morning of April 21st, 1526, dawn broke gently over the plains of Panipat. The air was still. The land was flat and open. Two armies faced one another, each carrying the weight of destiny. On one side stood Sultan Ibrahim Lodi, the ruler of the Delhi Sultanate. His army was immense, more than 100,000 soldiers. War elephants towering above the ranks, symbols of royal power and fear. On the other side stood Babur. He commanded barely 15,000 men. To most observers, the outcome seemed certain. But Babur had not come to Panipat relying on numbers alone. He had come with experience, with discipline, with strategy, and with something India had never fully faced before: gunpowder. Babur arranged his army with great care. He ordered carts to be chained together, forming a strong defensive barrier. Between these carts he placed cannons. Behind them stood matchlock gunners, trained to fire in controlled volleys. This was a new kind of warfare. When Sultan Ibrahim Lodi ordered his army forward, the ground shook beneath marching feet and charging elephants. Dust rose into the air. The sound was overwhelming. Then the cannons fired. A thunderous roar tore through the battlefield. Smoke filled the air. The noise echoed across the plains. The elephants panicked. Unfamiliar with the sound of gunpowder, they turned back, trampling their own soldiers. Confusion spread rapidly through Lodi's ranks. At that moment, Babur's cavalry struck from the flanks. They moved swiftly, decisively. What had begun as an overwhelming show of force collapsed into chaos. By midday, the battle was over. Sultan Ibrahim Lodi lay dead on the field of Panipat. In a single day, the Delhi Sultanate, which had ruled northern India for more than 3 centuries, came to an end. Babur had won. But victory did not bring immediate comfort. Babur himself wrote that India felt strange to him. The climate was harsh, the food unfamiliar, the customs different. He had conquered the land, but ruling it would be far more difficult. Still, Babur declared himself ruler of Delhi and Agra. With this act, a new dynasty was born, the Mughal Empire. The name came from Mongol, reflecting Babur's Central Asian heritage. Yet Babur's position remained uncertain. Powerful rivals refused to accept his rule. Among them rose one of India's greatest warriors, Rana Sanga of Mewar. A Rajput king renowned for courage, battlefield skill, and fierce resistance. In the year 1527, Babur and Rana Sanga met at the Battle of Kanwa. This battle would decide whether Panipat had been mere luck or the foundation of lasting rule. Before the battle, Babur addressed his soldiers. He spoke openly of fear, of faith, of destiny. He renounced wine, broke his drinking vessels, and declared the struggle a sacred cause. Morale strengthened. Once again, Babur relied on artillery and disciplined formations. Rana Sanga's forces fought bravely, but they could not break Babur's defences. The Mughal army emerged victorious. With the Battle of Kanwa won, Babur secured northern India. The Mughal Empire was no longer temporary, it was real. But Babur would not rule for long. In 1530, after only 4 years as emperor, Babur fell gravely ill. When his son Humayun became dangerously sick, Babur prayed for his life, offering his own in return. Soon after, Babur's health declined. He died at the age of 47. His body was later buried in Kabul, overlooking the city he loved most. Babur left behind more than an empire. He left his memoirs, the Baburnama, a rare and honest account of a conqueror's life. In its pages, Babur revealed doubt, longing, poetry, and reflection. The Mughal Empire had been born through battle. Whether it would survive now rested in the hands of his son, Humayun. Chapter 3. Humayun, the emperor who lost everything. Babur was gone, and the empire he left behind was fragile. In the year 1530, Babur's son Humayun ascended the Mughal throne. He was young, well-educated, refined in taste, but he was not his father. Humayun believed deeply in fate, in astrology, in signs and omens. He divided his days according to the planets. He delayed decisions, waiting for favourable stars. In an empire that demanded strength, time slipped away. Almost immediately, trouble rose on every horizon. Humayun's brothers grew restless. Each demanded territory. Each dreamed of power. Humayun, hoping to avoid conflict, granted them provinces. Instead of peace, he planted division. Beyond the Mughal court, a far greater threat was rising. In eastern India, in the region of Bengal and Bihar, a brilliant and determined leader emerged. His name was Sher Khan, later known as Sher Shah Suri. Sher Khan was not born a king. He was a skilled administrator, a disciplined general, a man who understood power. While Humayun hesitated, Sher Khan prepared. Their first major encounter came at the Battle of Chaucer in 1539. Humayun was caught unprepared. Sher Khan's forces attacked swiftly and decisively. The Mughal army collapsed. Humayun barely escaped, crossing the Ganges River under cover of darkness. The following year, at the Battle of Kannauj, Humayun faced Sher Khan once more. This time, the defeat was complete. Delhi fell. Agra fell. The Mughal Empire was lost. Humayun fled, not as an emperor, but as a wanderer. What followed was one of the most painful chapters in Mughal history. Humayun and his family wandered through deserts and mountains. They faced hunger, exhaustion, humiliation. At one point, Humayun's wife, Hamida Banu Begum, gave birth in the desert. The child was named Akbar. Born into exile, destined for greatness. With no refuge left in India, Humayun turned west. He crossed into Persia, seeking help from the Safavid Empire. The Persian Shah, Tahmasp, received him with honour, but at a price. Humayun was required to adopt the Shia faith, at least in appearance. With Persian support, Humayun rebuilt his strength. He learned new methods of governance, new court traditions, new artistic styles. Exile changed him. Years passed. In India, Sher Shah Suri ruled efficiently. He reformed taxation, built roads, established law and order. But his reign was short. After his death, his successors proved weak. The Suri Empire began to fracture. Humayun saw his moment. In 1555, with a strengthened army, Humayun returned. Step by step, city by city, he reclaimed his empire. Delhi fell back into Mughal hands. After 15 years of exile, Humayun was emperor once again. But fate was not finished. Only months after his return, Humayun fell while descending the steps of his library. He struck his head and died. His reign ended as quietly as it had resumed. Yet Humayun left behind something far greater than victory. He left behind stability and a son prepared to rule. A boy born in exile, a boy shaped by hardship, a boy who would become the greatest of all Mughal emperors. His name was Akbar, and with him the Mughal Empire would truly begin. Chapter 4. Akbar the Great, the making of an empire. Humayun was gone, and the Mughal throne passed to a boy just 13 years old. His name was Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar. He had been born in exile, raised amid uncertainty, surrounded by danger. Yet from the very beginning it was clear this was no ordinary child. At Akbar's side stood a trusted guardian and general, Bayram Khan. During Akbar's early years, Bayram Khan ruled in his name. But enemies moved quickly. In 1556, a powerful general named Hemu advanced toward Delhi. At the Second Battle of Panipat, the fate of the Mughal Empire hung once again in the balance. Hemu's forces were strong, confident, relentless. But in the chaos of battle, Hemu was struck by an arrow. Captured, defeated. The Mughal army prevailed. For the second time at Panipat, the empire was saved. Soon after, Akbar stepped out from Bayram Khan's shadow. He dismissed his regent and began to rule in his own name. Akbar was not like the rulers who came before him. He could not read or write, yet he possessed an extraordinary mind. He listened, he observed, he remembered. He surrounded himself with scholars, poets, philosophers and administrators from every background, every belief. Akbar understood that conquest alone could not hold an empire together. Unity required trust, and trust required tolerance. Akbar abolished the jizya tax on non-Muslims. He appointed Hindus to the highest offices of state. Rajput kings became allies, not enemies. Through marriage, respect, and diplomacy, Akbar secured loyalty without endless war. Yet when war was necessary, Akbar did not hesitate. He expanded the empire across northern and central India, Gujarat, Malwa, Bengal, Kashmir. Each campaign strengthened Mughal authority. But Akbar's greatest achievements were not only military. He reformed administration. Land was surveyed, taxes were standardized, corruption was reduced. For the first time, farmers knew what they owed, and officials were held accountable. Akbar also sought to understand faith. At his court in Fatehpur Sikri, he invited scholars from many religions: Muslims, Hindus, Jains, Christians, Zoroastrians. They debated openly, sometimes passionately. Akbar listened. From these discussions, he developed a philosophy known as Sul-e-Kul, peace with all. He believed that harmony among faiths strengthened the state. Akbar even attempted to create a new ethical order, focused on loyalty, morality, and reason. Though controversial, it reflected his desire to unite people beyond division. Under Akbar, art and architecture flourished. Great forts rose in Agra and Lahore. Cities were planned with care. Painting, music, and literature thrived. By the time Akbar died in 1605, the Mughal Empire was vast, stable, respected. He had transformed a fragile kingdom into a powerful state. Akbar was not merely a conqueror, he was a builder, and the empire he created would reach its greatest splendor under those who followed. His son, Jahangir. Chapter 5: Jahangir and Shah Jahan, Power, Art, and the Height of Mughal Splendor. Akbar was gone, and the vast empire he had built passed into the hands of his son. His name was Jahangir. Jahangir ascended the throne in 1605. Unlike his father, Jahangir was not driven by conquest. He was a lover of art, of nature, of refinement. He kept detailed journals, recording his thoughts, his emotions, and his judgments. Yet Jahangir's reign was not without turmoil. He struggled with addiction. Wine and opium clouded his health. And gradually, real power shifted to one remarkable woman, Nur Jahan. She was intelligent, commanding, politically brilliant. Nur Jahan issued orders, appeared on coins, influenced appointments. In many ways, she ruled alongside Jahangir. Despite internal challenges, the empire remained stable. Art flourished. Miniature painting reached extraordinary levels of detail. Nature studies, portraits, and court scenes were rendered with precision. Jahangir's court became a centre of beauty and culture. In 1627, Jahangir died. The throne passed to his son, Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan's reign marked the golden age of Mughal architecture. Under him, the empire was wealthy, confident, and powerful. Shah Jahan envisioned an empire of grandeur, and he built it in stone and marble. Palaces rose in Delhi and Agra. Mosques gleamed under the sun. But one monument would surpass all others, the Taj Mahal. Shah Jahan built it for his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. She died in childbirth, and with her death, Shah Jahan's heart broke. The Taj Mahal rose slowly, crafted from white marble, inlaid with precious stones. It was not merely a tomb, it was grief made eternal. Love turned into architecture. Under Shah Jahan, the Mughal court reached unmatched splendour. Silks, jewels, ceremonies of breathtaking scale. But beneath the beauty, trouble quietly grew. The empire's wealth was immense, but fragile. Lavish spending strained the treasury, and rivalry grew among Shah Jahan's sons. 4 princes, each ambitious, each watching, waiting. When Shah Jahan fell ill, war erupted within the palace. Brother turned against brother. Blood was spilled for the throne. In the end, one son emerged victorious, Aurangzeb. He imprisoned his father in Agra fort. From his window, Shah Jahan could see the Taj Mahal, the resting place of the woman he loved. Shah Jahan lived his final years in silence, watching. When he died in 1666, he was buried beside Mumtaz. Their story, carved in marble, endures. But the empire was about to change. The age of beauty gave way to the age of iron. Aurangzeb now ruled. Chapter 6. Aurangzeb, Faith, Power, and the Weight of an Empire. Aurangzeb had won the throne, but the victory came at a cost. Brothers lay dead, a father sat imprisoned, and the empire he inherited was vast and fragile. Aurangzeb ascended the Mughal throne in 1658. He was unlike any ruler before him. Where Akbar had sought tolerance, Aurangzeb sought order. Where Shah Jahan loved beauty, Aurangzeb valued discipline. He lived simply, dressed plainly, prayed regularly. He saw himself not as a divine king, but as a servant of God. Aurangzeb believed that an empire must rest on moral authority, and faith to him was non-negotiable. He reversed many of Akbar's policies. The jizya tax on non-Muslims was reinstated. Court music was discouraged. Religious law was enforced more strictly. To some, Aurangzeb was righteous. To others, he was unforgiving. Resistance soon followed. The Sikh community grew restless. In the West, Rajput alliances weakened. But the greatest challenge rose from the Deccan, the Marathas. Led by Shivaji, they were swift, determined, and fiercely independent. Aurangzeb underestimated them. What he believed would be a short campaign became a war that lasted decades. Aurangzeb personally led his armies south. Years turned into decades. Battles were fought, forts were taken, territories expanded. On maps, the Mughal Empire reached its greatest size. But beneath the surface, it was bleeding. War drained the treasury, supply lines stretched thin. Local governors grew powerful and disloyal. Aurangzeb spent the final 26 years of his reign on campaign. He ruled from tents, not palaces. He slept on the ground. He wrote copies of the Quran with his own hands. Yet even discipline could not hold everything together. Rebellions multiplied. Peasants suffered under heavy taxation. Trade declined. The unity Akbar had built slowly unravelled. In 1707, after ruling for nearly 50 years, Aurangzeb died. He left instructions for a simple burial. No grand tomb, no marble monument, only the earth and prayer. Aurangzeb left behind the largest Mughal empire in history, but also the most exhausted. Strong on the outside, fragile within. The empire had reached its greatest extent and crossed the invisible line toward decline. What followed would be confusion, weak rulers, court intrigue, endless struggle. The age of great emperors was over. The age of survival had begun. Chapter 7. The Decline of the Mughal Empire. Intrigue, weakness, and fragmentation. Aurangzeb was gone. The empire he had built was vast, but fragile. His sons inherited a kingdom weakened by decades of war, internal conflict, rebellion. No ruler since Akbar possessed his wisdom or vision. Weak rulers sat on the throne. Court intrigue flourished. Power shifted from the emperor to ministers and nobles. The Marathas grew stronger. From the Deccan, they challenged Mughal authority with lightning raids and daring attacks. In the north, Afghan and Rajput factions took advantage of the empire's weakness. Local governors acted independently, collecting taxes, raising armies, and ignoring Delhi. The economy suffered. Trade routes became unsafe. Agriculture declined in many regions. During this period, the Mughal court continued to display grandeur, but only as a shadow of its former glory. Forts and palaces still rose in Delhi, Agra, and Fatehpur Sikri, but the wealth that had built them was draining rapidly. The emperors themselves were often figureheads, unable to control distant provinces. Wars became frequent, often between siblings or ambitious courtiers. Foreign powers began to notice. European traders were active along the coasts. The British, the French, and the Portuguese began establishing footholds that would shape India's future. The Mughal Empire, once a symbol of unity, was now a patchwork of territories linked by loyalty that was fragile at best. By the early 18th century, Delhi remained the seat of power, but the real control was contested. The Marathas, the Sikhs, and regional rulers all carved out areas of autonomy. The emperors struggled to maintain authority, while rebellions erupted in Awadh, Bengal, and Gujarat. Even palace intrigue undermined the ruler's authority. Plots and assassinations became common. No one could fully trust anyone. Yet, for all its decline, the empire continued to awe the world. Mughal art, architecture, and culture remained unmatched. The Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, and countless gardens stood as reminders of past greatness. By the mid-18th century, it was clear the Mughal Empire was no longer an unstoppable power. It survived, but only just. And beyond India's borders, foreign powers were preparing to exploit the empire's weakness. The once mighty dynasty was entering its final phase, fragmented, vulnerable, a shadow of its former glory. The stage was set for the arrival of a new force, the British East India Company. History was moving forward, and the Mughal Empire would never be the same. Chapter 8. The last Mughal emperor and the arrival of the British. By the mid-18th century, the Mughal Empire had weakened. Its rulers were often powerless, its territories fragmented, and its wealth diminished. In the north, Delhi remained the symbolic heart of the empire, but the emperor's authority was largely ceremonial. The real power lay with regional rulers, the Marathas, the Sikhs, and increasingly foreign traders and military forces. Among these newcomers was the British East India Company. At first, the British were merchants. They traded cloth, spices, and Indian goods abroad. But over time, they began to wield power through armies and alliances. In 1658, the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was born. By the time he ascended the throne in 1837, the Mughal court was a shadow of its former glory. Bahadur Shah Zafar was more a poet than a general, a scholar more than a warrior. He loved painting, literature, and music, but he ruled an empire that existed mostly in name. His authority rarely extended beyond Delhi. The British East India Company had already expanded control across Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. They imposed their own laws, collected revenue, and commanded armies. Despite this, Zafar remained the symbolic head of millions of Indians. His court continued to celebrate Mughal traditions, arts, and ceremonies. In 1857, a spark ignited. The Indian Rebellion, sometimes called the Sepoy Mutiny, swept across northern India. The rebels declared Bahadur Shah Zafar the emperor of a restored Mughal kingdom. For a brief moment, it seemed the empire might rise again. But the rebellion failed. The British, with superior organisation and firepower, suppressed the revolt. Delhi fell. The Mughal court was captured. Bahadur Shah Zafar was tried by the British. His sons were executed. He was exiled to Rangoon in Burma. The last emperor spent his final years far from the land he had symbolically ruled. When he died in 1862, he was buried quietly without ceremony. The Mughal Empire had ended. Centuries of rule, of art, architecture, administration, and culture had come to a close. Yet its legacy endured. The monuments it left behind, the poetry, the gardens, and the fusion of cultures continued to inspire generations. The Mughals were no longer emperors, but their empire remained, in memory, in stone, and in the heart of India. Chapter 9. Legacy of the Mughal Empire: Culture, Architecture, and Influence. Though the Mughal Empire had ended as a political power, its influence continued to shape India for centuries to come. The emperors had built more than armies. They had built cities, palaces, and gardens. Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, and Delhi bore their mark. The Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, and countless mosques stood as monuments to artistry, devotion, and power. Mughal architecture blended Persian, Central Asian, and Indian styles. Domes soared, minarets rose. Gardens were carefully planned to reflect paradise on earth. But the legacy went beyond stone and marble. It lived in the arts. Painting flourished under their patronage. Miniature paintings captured court life, hunting scenes, and portraits. Calligraphy adorned manuscripts, walls, and mosques. Music thrived. Classical styles were refined. Instruments such as the sitar and the tabla became central to Indian music. The Mughals also influenced administration. Akbar's land and tax reforms inspired future governance systems. His ideas of tolerance and inclusivity shaped political thought for generations. Language, too, bore their mark. Urdu, a fusion of Persian, Arabic, and local dialects, flourished in poetry and literature. It became a bridge between cultures, spoken and cherished across India. Even cuisine felt the Mughal touch. Rich gravies, fragrant rice, and sweets such as halwa and kebabs reflected the blending of Central Asian and Indian flavours. The Mughal court had been a centre of learning, encouraging scholars, poets, and explorers. Libraries grew, ideas spread. Though their political power waned, their cultural influence endured. The Mughals had created a civilization within India, one where art, faith, and administration intertwined. Their story reminds us that empires are more than armies. They are also ideas, beauty, and the imagination of humanity. And even today, hundreds of years later, the echoes of Mughal India can be felt in architecture, language, music, and daily life. The empire may have fallen, but its legacy remains eternal. Chapter 10: Regional Successors and the Enduring Legacy of the Mughals. After the fall of the Mughal Empire, India did not return to emptiness. Instead, smaller kingdoms and regional powers emerged to fill the vacuum. The Marathas expanded across the Deccan. The Sikhs consolidated power in Punjab, and the Nawabs of Bengal, Awadh, and Hyderabad established semi-independent states. Yet, even in decline, the influence of the Mughals was undeniable. Their administrative systems were copied and adapted. Their artistic styles continued to inspire painters and architects. Even courts of new rulers tried to emulate Mughal ceremonies and grandeur. Language, poetry, and literature remained heavily influenced by Mughal culture. Persian remained the language of administration for decades, and Urdu flourished in poetry and prose. The courts of regional rulers celebrated music, painting, and architecture with a Mughal flair. In Bengal, miniature painting developed a unique regional style, while retaining Mughal influences. In Awadh, palaces and gardens mirrored Mughal symmetry and elegance. Trade, too, felt the imprint of the Mughals. Their roads and caravan routes continued to connect regions, facilitating commerce, ideas, and cultural exchange. Even as British power expanded across India, they recognised the Mughal legacy. Delhi remained a symbolic centre, and the title of emperor was respected, even if only ceremonial. The memory of the Mughals lived on, in stories, in architecture, in poetry, and in the imagination of the people. Festivals, rituals, and cuisine carried traces of Mughal taste and tradition. The grandeur of the past continued to inspire new generations, from the courts of princes to the lives of ordinary citizens. Though politics had changed and power had shifted, the cultural foundations laid by the Mughals remained strong. It was a reminder that an empire's true legacy is not only measured in territory or wealth, but in the ideas, art, and values it leaves behind. And thus, even as India moved into a new era, the Mughals remained alive in memory and imagination, an eternal presence in the story of the subcontinent. Chapter 11. The Mughal influence on art, architecture, and culture in modern India. The Mughals may have vanished from political power, but their presence continued to shape India in countless ways. Their art, architecture, and culture remained visible in cities, palaces, and monuments. The Taj Mahal stood as the ultimate symbol of love and architectural genius. Its white marble, inlaid with gemstones, inspired generations of builders and artists. The Red Fort of Delhi and Agra Fort continued to evoke Mughal power and elegance. Gardens, designed with meticulous symmetry, mirrored the Mughal vision of paradise on earth. From the Shalimar Gardens in Kashmir to the gardens of Fatehpur Sikri, their influence endured. Painting, too, remained alive. Mughal miniature styles inspired regional schools in Rajasthan, Bengal, and Awadh. Even today, artists replicate the delicate detail, the vibrant colours, and the elegant compositions that the Mughals perfected. Music and literature carried forward the Mughal aesthetic. Classical music forms such as Dhrupad and Khyal were cultivated in Mughal courts. Poets continued to write in Persian and later Urdu, their verses echoing the literary refinement of the empire. Cuisine reflected the Mughal legacy as well. Dishes such as biryani, kebabs, halwa, and rich gravies remain staples of Indian kitchens. They represent the fusion of Central Asian and Indian flavours that the Mughals perfected. Even governance bore traces of Mughal influence. Systems of land assessment, revenue collection, and court administration were adapted by regional rulers and later by the British. In modern India, the Mughal presence is everywhere. In Delhi, Agra, and Lucknow, architecture carries their signature. In language, poetry, and music, their influence resonates. In everyday life, from festivals to cuisine, their legacy endures. The Mughals remind us that empires are not only measured by the size of their armies or the expanse of their territory. They are measured by the culture, art, and ideas they leave behind. And so, hundreds of years later, the Mughal Empire lives on, not as rulers, but as creators, patrons, and visionaries. Their story is eternal, etched in stone, captured in verse, and carried in the spirit of India itself. Chapter 12. Mughal Art, Literature and Architecture, Iconic Examples and Global Significance. The Mughal Empire was more than a political power. It was a cultural beacon. Its rulers were patrons of art, architecture and literature, leaving a mark that extended far beyond India. Architecture was perhaps the most visible legacy. The Taj Mahal, built by Shah Jahan, is known worldwide as a symbol of love and perfection. The Red Fort of Delhi and Agra Fort demonstrate the Mughals' mastery of fortification and aesthetics. Intricate carvings, marble inlay, and symmetrical layouts reflect both Persian influence and Indian craftsmanship. Fatehpur Sikri, built by Akbar, was a city of vision. Its palaces, mosques and courtyards blended functionality and beauty. It stood as a testament to the integration of diverse cultural elements. Painting thrived under Mughal patronage. Miniature paintings captured court life, royal portraits and historical events. Artists combined Persian techniques with Indian themes, creating a unique visual language. In literature, the Mughals encouraged poetry and prose. Persian remained the language of the court, while Urdu developed as a rich literary medium. Works ranged from historical chronicles to romantic poetry, reflecting both grandeur and humanity. Music and performance arts were also central to Mughal culture. Classical music forms flourished in the courts, while dance and storytelling entertained and educated. Beyond India, Mughal art influenced the world. European travellers and historians marvelled at the architecture, gardens and miniature paintings. Persian, Central Asian and Indian styles merged to create something entirely new. The Mughals' impact extended to urban planning. Cities like Agra, Delhi and Lahore were designed with symmetry, grandeur and civic utility in mind. Gardens, water channels and palaces were arranged with mathematical precision and artistic vision. Even today, Mughal influence is global. Architects, artists and scholars study their buildings, paintings and manuscripts. Tourists from around the world come to marvel at monuments built centuries ago. The Mughal Empire reminds us that power is not only measured by armies or wealth, but by the enduring influence of culture and creativity. Through their art, their architecture and their literature, the Mughals continue to inspire awe and admiration across the world. Chapter 13. The Mughal Economy, Trade and Society. The Mughal Empire was not only a kingdom of armies and rulers, it was a kingdom of trade, agriculture and wealth. Agriculture formed the backbone of the economy. Fertile lands along the Ganges, Indus and Deccan produced crops to feed millions. The empire introduced efficient taxation systems. Akbar's Zapt system standardized revenue collection, ensuring fairness while filling the treasury. Farmers knew what they owed, and officials were accountable. Trade flourished. Indian textiles, spices, indigo and gems were sought across the world. European merchants, Portuguese, Dutch, French and British, came to Indian ports to exchange goods for wealth. Markets and cities thrived. Agra, Delhi, Lahore and Fatehpur Sikri became hubs of commerce. Caravan routes connected regions and facilitated cultural exchange. The empire supported craftspeople and artisans. Jewellery, textiles, ceramics and weapons were produced with skill and artistry. The Mughal economy was not static. It adapted to regional needs and responded to global demand. Society was organised hierarchically. Nobles, soldiers, merchants, artisans and peasants each had defined roles. Despite divisions, the emperor's court sought to maintain order, justice and stability. Women, especially in royal families, played roles in patronage, culture and politics. Akbar's and Jahangir's courts saw women influencing art, architecture, and even political decisions. Religion influenced daily life, but coexistence was often encouraged. Hindu, Muslim, Jain, Sikh, and other communities lived under Mughal administration, contributing to trade, governance, and culture. The empire's wealth, organisation, and cultural sophistication made it one of the most powerful states in the world at its peak. Yet, as with all empires, wealth and complexity brought new challenges. Growing population, administrative strain, and distant provinces would test the empire's resilience. Chapter 14. Religion, Law and Administration in the Mughal Empire. The Mughals ruled not only with armies, but with law, faith, and administration. Akbar introduced reforms to integrate the empire. He codified laws, balanced taxation, and encouraged religious dialogue. His policy of sulh-e-kull, peace with all, sought harmony among faiths. Hindus held office, Muslims served the army, and scholars of all faiths were welcomed. The legal system was complex. Sharia law guided religious matters, while secular law addressed trade, land, and civil disputes. Courts were staffed with judges trained in administration and jurisprudence. Akbar's system of mansabdars ranked nobles according to loyalty and service. They received land revenue rights to maintain soldiers and govern territories. This system balanced power between the emperor and local rulers. Under Jahangir and Shah Jahan, administration became more centralized. Records were meticulously kept and provincial governance strengthened. Religion played a larger role under Aurangzeb. He enforced stricter Islamic law, revived the jizya tax, and discouraged practices he considered un-Islamic. This created tension. While some praised his piety, others rebelled. The Marathas, Sikhs, and local rulers challenged Mughal authority. Despite these tensions, the Mughal administration remained efficient. Roads, forts, irrigation, and revenue systems were maintained across vast regions. The empire demonstrates how governance, religion, and law can sustain a state, but also how rigid policies can sow the seeds of decline. Chapter 15. Wars, Internal Strife, and the Final Decline. After Aurangzeb, the empire entered a period of instability. Succession disputes plagued the court. Princes fought for the throne, weakening central authority. Provincial governors acted independently. The Marathas expanded influence, challenging Mughal supremacy. The Sikhs consolidated power in Punjab, while Afghans and Rajputs secured regional autonomy. The treasury was strained. Lavish spending, wars and corruption drained resources. The economy, once strong, began to falter. Agriculture suffered, trade slowed, and public unrest grew. Foreign powers observed carefully. The British East India Company capitalised on Mughal weakness, establishing trading posts and later military control. The emperors became ceremonial figures. Their influence diminished, their courts symbolic. The last emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, symbolised the empire's final days. The rebellion of 1857 was a desperate attempt to revive Mughal authority. The rebellion failed, Delhi fell, the empire officially ended. Yet even in decline, the Mughal legacy endured. Art, architecture, literature and culture continued to inspire generations. Monuments, gardens and cities stood as eternal reminders of their grandeur. The Mughal Empire teaches that power is temporary, but culture, knowledge and creativity can endure forever. Chapter 16. The Mughal Empire in Retrospect. Lessons from History. The Mughal Empire was one of the greatest in world history. From Babur's conquests to Akbar's vision, Shah Jahan's grandeur, and Aurangzeb's discipline, the empire shaped the Indian subcontinent for over 3 centuries. Its rise was swift. Babur's victories at Panipat laid the foundation. Humayun struggled but returned from exile to continue the dynasty. Akbar transformed the empire. He unified a vast land through diplomacy, tolerance, and administrative innovation. Jahangir and Shah Jahan expanded culture, art, and architecture. The Taj Mahal, Fatehpur Sikri, and Red Fort still stand as symbols of human creativity and devotion. Aurangzeb expanded the empire to its greatest size, but strict policies and continuous warfare weakened its foundations. After Aurangzeb, weak successors and internal strife allowed regional powers and foreign forces to rise. The Marathas, Sikhs, and Europeans all exploited Mughal weakness. The last emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, symbolized the twilight of the dynasty. The rebellion of 1857 marked the official end of Mughal rule. Yet even in decline, the empire's cultural, artistic and administrative achievements endured. The Mughal Empire teaches us that greatness is more than armies and wealth. It is also culture, ideas, and the vision to shape society for generations. Chapter 17. The Eternal Legacy of the Mughal Empire. Though the Mughal emperors no longer sit on thrones, their legacy lives on. India, and indeed the world, still carries traces of Mughal influence. Architecture reflects their grandeur. The Taj Mahal, Red Fort and Jama Masjid remain marvels of design and skill. Art and literature bear their imprint. Miniature paintings, calligraphy and poetry continue to inspire artists and scholars. Music and dance carry echoes of Mughal courtly traditions. Cuisine blends flavours perfected over centuries. The Mughal administrative system laid the foundation for future governance. Land revenue systems, legal codes and courtly hierarchies influenced rulers who came after. The empire's story is a lesson in balance. Power and conquest alone cannot sustain an empire. Vision, culture and tolerance are just as important. From Babur to Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughals shaped a civilization. They unified diverse peoples, encouraged art and learning, and left a mark that endures today. Even centuries later, their monuments stand, their words echo, and their influence persists. The Mughal Empire may have ended as a political power, but it lives on in memory, culture, and the very soul of India. Their story reminds us that while empires rise and fall, the human spirit and creativity can endure forever. And so, the Mughal Empire remains eternal, not merely in history books, but in the art, architecture and culture that continues to inspire millions around the world.